Here we are, come on.
Come on up close, folks. We got that ambient noise outside, and I don't live here on Auburn Avenue, either literally or, and this is Auburn right here, or culturally. So we want to be respectful. If anybody comes over to talk to us, we'll engage with them. All right, this is their community. There's several different reasons we're here. Just going to mention them, and then Charles Douglas is going to kind of bring us to a close as part of our education and our launch for canvassing today. But in one of the more remarkable kind of moments in the Common Power experience for myself, Rita, where'd you go, Rita? Rita and I were walking along talking, and we were just chatting, and she said, I grew up in Detroit. And I said, I grew up in Dearborn, which is outside Detroit. She goes, I grew up in Dearborn. She said, I went to Etzel Ford High School. I said, I went to Etzel Ford High School. She goes, what year did you graduate? I said, 1985. She graduated in 1988. We were in high school together. All right?
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
That's wow. That is an amazing. I look forward to more conversation. So we're on a street corner that has had a banner up here. It's not here anymore. That often says the corner that changed the world. And this corner has enormous symbolism and history. Down the block this way on Auburn Avenue is the headquarters of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in 1960s. There's no marker whatsoever for the building, but it's just down the block right here where they took their office and started in 1960, when Ella Baker and a group of others founded the SNCC. John Lewis was one of the leaders of SNCC, and so he's symbolized here partly because of SNCC's history. On this corner right here was a bank. It was the first African-American owned bank in the state of Georgia, and it eventually funded and mortgages and credits lines for all kinds of African-Americans who couldn't get loans from white banks. And this funded much of the strength of the African-American community. Eventually, the Atlanta Life Insurance Company, which becomes the largest life insurance company owned by a black individual in America, comes out of this area, and it's kind of one of the guys there is part of the partnership of that, and they fund the cars in the Montgomery bus boycott because the white insurance companies cancel all the cars they're using. So they're restoring this right now locally. Georgia State University and a local community organization is restoring this. And so we've been coming to this location for a couple of years as part of our learning tours. Just in that amount of time, this has gone through a lot in this amount of time. It's great. This actually wasn't even paved right here when we first started coming here. It was all gravel. So this is a historic place for kind of building community and strength and legacy of the African-American community. Across the street is Big Bethel African Methodist Episcopal. The headquarters of the AME Church is in Philadelphia, born out of protest. A group of African-American parishioners before the Civil War who were free left there because they weren't being treated well by whites and broke off to form the AME. This is one of the AME churches. AME churches are often at the heart of the freedom struggle all over the country. This is known as a movement church. It had a lot of day laborers and workers who would be here. They would work here and come to this church. And then 3 blocks that way was Ebenezer Baptist, where the King family worshiped and ministered, and where Reverend Raphael Warnock today is the minister. And Ebenezer was known as the high upper status black church. This was the movement church, and that was the upper class church. And there were tensions there, and the ability to bridge those over time is part of what built the modern civil rights movement. This church is so meaningful in the American civil rights freedom struggle story. I should say the Black American civil rights freedom struggle story is that when Nelson Mandela was freed from prison in South Africa, he came to the United States, and when he came to the US, he spoke at the United Nations in New York City, and then got on a plane and came here to Atlanta and spoke there. All right? He wanted to give honor and recognition to the work that had come out of this community in this place. And on that corner over there is the Oddfellows Club. Oddfellows are There's an Oddfellows in Seattle, for those of you from Seattle. It was like the Elks and the different Shriners over time, and it was segregated, and it was a place of many speakers in African American over time in this community would come here. And Malcolm X gave a famous speech there in October of 1960 that actually was a really landmark moment in the struggle of himself and his journey, and eventually his peeling off from the Nation of Islam. So it's a really iconic space and iconic moment.
Hold on, pause.
So John Lewis, was born in Troy, Alabama, and eventually goes to Nashville, goes to college, and becomes the Nashville Nonviolence Movement. He's the third chair of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. The very first one was Marion Barry, who goes on to become the mayor of Washington, D.C. Should have been Diane Nash. Diane Nash was the leader of the movement in Nashville, but as a woman, she just didn't have that chance to take that leadership role. But when you hear the people who did work with her, and she's still alive, they all revere her for her work. But Lewis is memorialized here. He passed in 2020 because we're in his district, the 6th Congressional District that he served. Nakima Williams is the representative here now. And we're also in a space of town that he spent a lot of time in when he was here. So he passed in 2020, in June of 2020. He and C.T. Vivian, who Mr. Charles mentioned, died the same day in 1920. It was really a turning the page moment for the movement. And
what year?
2020.
Thank you.
2020. And this place, where we're literally standing right now, is where Reverend Raphael Warnock has launched all 3 of his election campaigns, right here, okay? He's come here? What? Okay, and so we're here because we're launching our canvas. When I came here a year ago with my son, who's in high school, we do these baseball road trips, and we go to different stadiums, and we came to Atlanta to go to the park here, and they had an incredible Hank Aaron exhibit, incredible. But I said, I want to go somewhere else, and he's a teenager, so he's like, where, Dad? Where? And it was after the game, and I said, I just want to go to this one place, and we came right here, and I wanted to tell him about this, and I said, this is where I go on these trips when I go to Atlanta. And you never know if this stuff breaks through, but I want him to know this is where I come out of respect for this. So we come here at Common Power to start our learning tours. And it seemed like appropriate and fitting to start here today at this place as we go do the canvassing for the rest of the time here. That kind of wraps up my time and my education. I'm not going anywhere for the next couple hours. I will leave this afternoon. But we revere the work that was in Atlanta, and we seek to pick up the baton. As Kamala Harris said, the baton has been passed, all right? Mr. Charles is generous to spend time with us and to help us to understand the baton and the passing of it. And then we take it very seriously, all right? Those are the words of John Lewis, a part of them from his 1963 speech at the March on Washington. And so I'll stop here. Another Mr. Charles is going to pick us up.
I'm not. This is the Mr. Charles. I'm just regular Charles. Before we get to that, though, since we got some time, any questions for David from the hotel or from here at all? Or questions for Mr. Charles?
Yeah.
What was that?
Any questions?
I'd love to get a picture.
Okay, we'll get a picture. Yep. At some point, we'll get a picture. Yep.
Mr. Charles, I got a question for you. Did you ever meet Malcolm X?
Yes. Yes. When I was 17, Malcolm X, back to the importance of young people in the movement, they are willing to take more risk than those of us who are older now. And that was true in 1965 when Malcolm
Yeah, come on in if you need.
When Malcolm X was in Tuskegee, and members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the young folks in the movement, invited Malcolm X to Selma to speak to us. He came to Brown Chapel Church. I knew about that because I was a student leader, so I sort of kept up with things like that. And what he was talking about at the time we thought was pretty radical. It was totally different from what we understood that we were fighting for. We were fighting for integration, and I'm not sure if he cared about integration or not integration. He was bigger than that. what he cared about is the human condition of black people in America. And that's what he basically spoke to about in Selma. His speech was the field Negro and the house Negro. And one of the points he made, and there are parallels today, I will use names. Clarence Thomas might be an archetype of one idea of that. And a Warnock and a John Lewis may be the other side of that discussion. And there are so many other people who are rising up to take the side of the Warnocks and the John Lewises. And that's the side we're on.
Yeah.
But he basically made the point that, like, they're always, when the slave master's house is burning, the field Negro would say, "Master, our house is burning, and let's do everything we can to put
That'd
it
be the
out."
house. The
House.
If the house is burning, the house Negro would say, "I'm sorry, that Master, our house is burning," and they would do everything they could to put the fire out. In difference, the field Negro would say, if the master was dying or sick, rather than say we're sick, he said, "I hope he dies." Somebody brought that up today about what our sentiment should be about when catastrophe hit the other side. And we weren't proud of what we said, but we were honest about what we said. I would have been one of those people who said, the people who oppose what's right, if the master's sick, I wouldn't wish him a poor situation, but I would be happy if he was handicapped and that his ability to oppress and do bad things to people was ended, regardless of what that process took. That was Malcolm's position. His position was very simple, and this simple position was very radical at the time, and he was demonized for this. His position was very simple. He said that all I want is that black people be treated just like you and your children, your brothers, your sisters, your uncles, your aunts were treated. Just simply treat us like the human beings that you're being treated like. And that's not being done in America. And as long as that's being done, I'm uncomfortable. And I'll speak out against it. And the effect, and people ask me about courage. Courage isn't oftentimes something that comes in one big attempt, in one big participating in something. It comes gradually. And what Malcolm X did was talking about in that speech that really affected even the black power level of consciousness now, is that, like, you have to insist, just like we're insisting that our vote be taken with respect, that everybody else should be taken with the same respect. He was demonized then for that, and we're just learning. And I learned very little. I was into integration because I didn't know any better. Luckily, my consciousness, and we talk about people treating us bad. They have to be helped, but their consciousness is so low, like mine was at the time, that we didn't understand what our real responsibility to ourselves, our country, to each other was, and therefore we act poorly. One of the things I want to say about you is that, like, one of the reasons I'm here on this block today is because I'm surrounded by people who act courageously, and that is a continuation of our better selves, and that's what Malcolm X is calling us to be.
Mm-hmm. You got something? Okay, you just amen.
Amen.
Go ahead, man.
So the movement that you and so many others followed was nonviolence, and learning and understanding what it is to not fight back and meet force and violence with force and violence. Did you ever question that? Did you ever push back against nonviolence?
Well, the movement was nonviolent, but it wasn't. It was forceful.
Mm-hmm.
It was active nonviolence, not conceding nonviolence, and it turned out to be a much more powerful force. To answer your question, I was heavily influenced by young folks, so I accepted our nonviolent approach to things for two reasons. One is that I realized that they had all the power, and the most important weapon we had was the moral high ground, and that was a weapon that was the strongest for at that point. Now, was I willing to go to nonviolence at a point later than that, had it not been for the leadership? Because we put something bigger than ourselves in front of like how we felt personally. You know, no matter what your situation was in life, that was subsumed, put under the big issue: black freedom, black expression, black life. And that was what was most important. So whatever your issue was, it was minuscule in comparison to what the big issue was. And so I accepted Dr. King's leadership because of that. And that's what made the movement successful. It was a practical on my, John Lewis and Bernard Lafayette and people, Reverend C.T. Vivian, Dr. King, they were totally committed to nonviolence as a philosophy in life. And I understand the rudimentary and the high roads of all of that. I'm not that big, you know. I struggle with it and I participate in it, but as a philosophy, I haven't totally absorbed that. And I'm hoping that we can stay on the path of using the high road to achieve our goals. But to be honest with you, Trumpism makes that very, very difficult.
Based on what you know you were facing, why still do it? Why still continue? Where did that resiliency come from to continue?
Well, when my daughter was 12 years old, she saw me on TV, and she said, you know, Daddy, you're really courageous. And I cried, you know, because you're my 12-year-old daughter telling me I'm courageous. And I never really given that very much thought. And what I realized after hearing that is that, like, it wasn't, I may have been courageous, but more important than that, I was indignant. I could no longer accept the way I was being treated as a human being. My mother and father were treated as a human being. The people in my community were treated as a human being. And history comes to a point where you have to do something, regardless of the circumstances. Just like we know with Trumpism, we have to do something. And so it came to that point then. That's why what you do today is very important. It's come to this point where you have to do something, regardless of the sacrifice. And so therefore, I did it because I didn't have a choice anymore. There weren't any other options. Either you accept somebody taking your dignity, or you accept the consequences of fighting to maintain it.
So, thank you for that, Mr. Charles. So this idea of do something, I talked about how we're students of history at Common Power, and we look backwards to look forward. The statement behind me tells you exactly what we're supposed to be doing. Jeffrey, can you read that loud so everyone can hear, please?
I appeal to all of you to get into this great revolution that is sweeping this nation. Get in and stay in the streets of every city, every village, every hamlet of this nation until true freedom comes, until revolution of 1776 is complete. John Lewis.
John Lewis. Get in and stay in. Get in and stay in the streets of every city, every hamlet. So there's the get in part, right? I talked about how it's easy to start stuff. John Lewis says to go there, like we're doing here. David says that we do a bunch of our education, but we also do our action in person. There are plenty of great organizations who phone bank and text bank and postcard. Common Power goes to the place where history was made so that we can help create new history. We get in and then we stay in. This is our 7th year in. We've created an organization that is not just about one election, not just about when the cameras come and the crowds come, but after they leave as well. We're here for this election when Kamala Harris is running for president, when she'll become president. She'll accept the nomination on January 20th, and then we'll rest on January 21st. But not for another 2 years or 4 years. In 2 months after that, we'll be in Wisconsin for a Supreme Court race, a state Supreme Court race. In the fall of that year, we will be in Virginia for their major elections. In between that, there's going to be special elections. Last year, the Pennsylvania House was up for grabs 4 times. We were there every single time. Wow. This is not about one moment. It feels like it. It feels like it's been about one moment every year for the past few years. It is about getting in and staying in. And that is what is asked of us. The struggle that we know culturally, that is a birthright, is something that now we all share. We all understand it in ways that we didn't before. This is not about changing our country back to some normal. This is about all of us understanding that the fight is all of ours, and now we share it. So the way that we exemplify that is by this. Everybody hands in. Hands in. Hold on, I'm gonna do this too because I'm trying something new out here. Ready?
Oh, it's a drone. It's not an enemy drone. Jeffrey, can your manicure be on top?
All right. Don't look at the drone. Oh. That didn't work the way it was supposed to. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
We'll get it. There we go. Okay. We'll put that away for now. Look, sometimes we try things and it doesn't work out. And you know what we do? We keep going. Because it's not just about one moment. It's not just about one election. It's for this one and every one after this. But the only way we make it to those moments is together. Further together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Further together. All right.